Oh shit, pick it up. Okay. All right. We'll wait for a few people to get into the live stream. Oh, it's two or three of you already waiting, man. The live stream hadn't even kicked off, and three of you are already here. What's going on? Say something, just let me and Roger know that you're in the house, and we will, acknowledge you, of course. All right. Okay. Well, guys, this is Coach Shelton Harrison of LDBCSports.com. You're live on the Coach Shelton Harrison Combat Sports Show live. And we have Roger Allen in the live stream today. That's right, Mr. Roger Allen. He is the manager of Antonina and Valentina Shevchenko. Oh,
Thank you,
man.
Coach.
How you doing today, sir?
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for connecting. Always enjoy coming on your show and always enjoy listening.
Man, well, hey, I'm glad you was listening, man. And you know, Roger's one of the few managers, who actually interacts with the public, and a lot of fighters and managers don't do that, but he does, Smart manager, man. Is it all like, is it sort of like a promotional thing, or you just
You
do it?
know, man, I'll tell you, like kind of, the history that how you and I got connected. But, early on, I would look and search and gather information, kind of get a temperature, looking on the internet, about Valentina. And I kept bumping into your channel. And I said, man, this guy's like a fan, like a real fan, like, uh, not just a lukewarm fan or someone, but also someone that has some understanding, of like boxing or the technical side of like striking. So I listened and listened and listened, and then I reached out to you and we started chatting a little bit and connecting a little bit, and now almost, I'd have to say I consider you a friend of mine. We've talked so much all over, the last couple years, I guess. So it's been interesting. I always listen to your show. Most of the time live if I can, if not recorded, and it's very entertaining. And also, always enjoy, your audience. The lovers and the haters. It doesn't matter. It's always entertaining to watch. And you and Eric, I hope Eric gets to come on tonight because I think you two are going to be the dynamic duo of 2018. I like the kind of yin and yang that you two guys have. You're passionate and sometimes hardcore, and that's good. And then Eric's kind of the cooler, trying to please everybody and keep the peace. And so I think it's a good balance. You tip too far one side or the other, and then it's always good to land in the middle.
Hey, man. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Hopefully we get Eric on here tonight. Eric is trying to get he's having an issue at his house with his internet connection. And
Hmm.
those things can be an issue. So he's trying to get on, and he's trying to make it out. A couple of guys here in the stream, and they're here. They came quick, man. It's already 16, and we ain't been on that long. You got Arpit Singh, Zaman Zaman. You got Marcus Bell, the moderator. I mean, what do you call it? Channel moderator, keep trolls away. Michael DeSanta, Janie. Okay, Janie Luce. Okay, that's your name. TJ 347. So they're all here. And yeah, man, let's get it popping, man.
All right.
So what are your thoughts about this particular fight? She's gonna face Valentina's gonna face Priscilla Cachoeira.
Hmm.
Uh, what kind of thoughts you have about that?
Hey, I think for us, any fight is good for Valentina. I mean, she's one that likes to stay active. There are other fighters that kind of take a little different tact, and they can be a little more selective, and and consequently, you're not seeing them fight as often. And you and I've touched base on this before. You mentioned it. Not sure that the audience like they fully understand it, but you know, a lot of the fighters that aren't fighting that you're not seeing on cards, often it can be that they've turned down a fight and then they're going to be, they can be sitting for a while. And, I can tell you for this fight, I mean, we had numerous discussions early on, immediately, even after Valentina's fight with Nunes. I mean, we were in constant communication, with the UFC about her fighting, some short notice fights, and to get where we are, there's been at least seven opponents, offered at that flyweight division to get where we are now. So, that's, I think it's a good opportunity for Valentina. She's fought in Belém, Brazil before in Muay Thai. So, I mean, she has a ton of fans in Brazil. So it's going to be really exciting for us as a team to go to Brazil. Um, and she, now that she's at 125, I mean, I always say Valentina's a different animal, but she's different animal now because you see her training. I mean, I get to see it just like, I get to see things that people don't, from the outside don't get to see, but she is incredibly motivated, and I see her using tools that she hasn't used before, and it's going to be really an exciting fight. I think so. I think stylistically, it's going to be an exciting fight to watch.
Yeah, Valentina said that she's gonna finish this fight. She said she's gonna finish her. That's that's pretty aggressive coming from Valentina because normally she's kind of like passive. Hey, my training, I'm just gonna believe in my training, but nah, she said that she's gonna finish this girl.
She said it. She said it more than one occasion. I mean, that's I mean, I've got to see the progression of Valentina. I mean, the day that she came to the States, I mean, we knew that this was her home in this division, and she was good enough that she was able to fight up and weight. You can read it, you can hear people say, well, Valentina's never fought at 125, or she hasn't shown that she can fight at 125. She's fought at 125 pretty much in that range her whole life. And when you have to, when you have to, with her, well, just for example, I told you how many fights we were offered, but over the course of her career, I couldn't tell you how many fights that have fallen apart for her, um, for various reasons, some legit, some not legit. But if you're taking a hard cut on all those, you get towards, you're starting that weight cut, or you're, and those events happen. I mean, you only got so many of those in your back pocket, especially as a female athlete. One of the kind of catchphrases that I've had a conversation with her before, and she's said it, and maybe not so catchy, but when you cut those, as a woman athlete, and you're dealing with all those stress on all the, all your organ systems and all this, that if you cut too much, when the weight comes back, it brings friends. And that's what she said, and I thought that was really funny. But it, from talking to her and Antonina and some other female athletes that we work with, it's apparently that's true. I can't speak from experience, but I can speak from what their experience is. And they they're friends with probably hundreds of female athletes, or have contact with hundreds of female athletes. So they deal with all these, issues. There's a lot to manage, but 125 is her home. That's the right weight for her, and we expect, very big things. And like I told you, our training is just off the chart. She did a test weight cut, sometime, I want to say it was in early December. I think she did a test cut, and then did some, heavy sparring afterwards to simulate a fight, and she felt dynamite. She's faster. She has more, it's hard to believe, more stamina, just more explosive. Just It's just unbelievable. And so I think you guys are going to be in for a show.
Oh, man, I can't wait for that show. I keep saying that Pavel has a plan. And I say that. That's just like the Yoda. When the Yoda MMA, Io Rhino, super chat, super chat, super chat. Thank you, sir. You're the man. We'll get at it. Now the coach can take that and go go get him a pair of clippers and cut the coach's hair. That's what he'll do. Um, okay, TC Johnson. Okay, I'm gonna get some of these questions in. He said, okay, yeah. So Valentina, it's against the girl who's making their first UFC fight. So let's see. So I mean, what do you? So Priscilla, what do you know about Priscilla? Because he's saying that she's fighting a girl. that's getting her first UFC fight. But I guess they don't really know the whole story as to how this fight happened.
You know, the way this fight happened is Priscilla was originally scheduled to fight Lauren Murphy on the Ultimate Fighter finale. Um, and her visa, I've made comments before, her visa coming to the US did not come through. So she wasn't able to fight on that fight card. So so Lauren was without, an opponent, and obviously she got to end up fighting Barb. So Priscilla, she was signed with the UFC without a fight. We had, been offered many other opponents, and then we were given a date, that we were going to fight at, and um, some of the other opponents they just didn't accept, and so Priscilla, she stepped up, she took the fight, all the credit to her, and she's going to get to go up north in northern Brazil and have her debut on the big show, on the main card, uh, against one of the best fighters in the world. So I have to give her nothing but respect. She has my full respect.
Wow. Yeah, she's definitely had a has a pretty good interesting story. Background's pretty good, and now she's a professional fighter. So you
Hmm.
know, be an interesting matchup. See how she handles fighting against one of the best in the world. It's gonna be a pretty decent matchup. But
Well, you'll know, I mean, it's it's we'll see. The stadium I think we're fighting in has a capacity around 11 or 12,000. So that's pretty sizable, and I think it's a fairly intimate stadium. So, the energy, the Brazilian cars, when you watch those fights on pay-per-view, everybody that fights in Brazil, they say there's just such an electric crowd. I mean, that's going to be interesting. That's going to be a really tough one for your debut to go in there and manage all the, you're on the big show, the big stage, your first one. So it'll be a test on, for her to see how all that, shakes out, because it's different there than fighting in the circuit leagues that she was fighting in to build her record. So this is truly a different challenge. This is going to be a big event in Belém. It's in Lyoto Machida's hometown there. His family, they have a gym there, so it's not like your Sao Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, but it's in a very isolated part in northern Brazil. It's a really neat experience for us to go there. But I think it's going to be I think it's going to be I think you'll have to watch the fight and see how Priscilla, behaves. But again, all the credit to her, um, of stepping up and taking that fight for her and her team.
man, yeah, Priscilla gets a lot of credit. And man, you got some great some questions coming in. Keith Brown, super chat, super chat. Now the coach will take that, and the coach will go get Eric some new internet service. That's what the coach will do. And if Eric wants to get upset out, the coach will smack the yellow off Eric's teeth. Um, yeah. But thanks, Keith Brown. Thanks, man. Definitely. That doesn't go to me. I actually use that. For the youth that come to my own gym and get them supplies and stuff. So it's pretty cool. Okay, TJ347 wants to know what are your thoughts about Nico Montano saying that Valentina does not deserve an immediate title shot?
Well, I can tell you this, that it's not up to Nico Montano to. She's not in the position to say that. That's going to come from the UFC brass, because the numbers really don't dictate being able to say that. I think, really, honestly, from the feedback, I mean, I interact with the media a lot. I don't think it flew over too well. Um, I really don't, because I think the reality of that, don't want to take anything from the season of what happened, but really, the wave of the best has yet to come. They're going to come from outside that show. And one of the reasons to make that show, part of the criteria was to be able to cut weight that many times in that short a period. So you're going to have the middle to the smaller size, other than Sarge, who obviously had trouble. to really healthily make those weight cuts and not have it affect them long term, you know, and short term, because they just weren't going to come in. They weren't going to be able to come in and make those weight cuts. It would have been bad for them. So they're outside of the show, but they'll be coming in. I mean, the UFC has already signed some of them, and I expect more and more to be coming in. And I think this is going to be the premier division of all the women. And I'm not just saying that because of Valentina. I really and truly think that you're going to have the migration from the strawweights. Some of that are just a little too big for that strawweight division. They're going to go up. You're going to have more of those bantamweights coming down, and then you've got, there's some really good women outside of the UFC right now that are, in different parts of the world that can come in and fill that division. And when it's there, you have a highly marketable division that has some really good talent. I think you're going to have some. It's going to go through some kind of like the cream's going to rise to the top, and you're going to have to kind of purge the rest, and you're going to go through some cycles where it's going to take maybe a year, but give it a year. I think it's probably going to be one of the most exciting divisions, I think, could be of any of the divisions in the UFC, not just for the women.
Okay. TJ 347, man, $50 in the super chat. And he says that Claudia Gadelia is the GOAT. Roger, I don't know if you agree with that, but that's what Keith says. I'm sorry, that's what TJ 347 says, that Claudia Gadelia is the GOAT. And I'm going to take that $50 and I'm going to get Eric another hat. I'm going to spend it all on Eric, because
So is it $50 and I'll make you holla? Is that the the saying? Hey, you know what's great, TJ? What's great? I think that's awesome that you think Claudia is the goat, because everybody supporting WMMA, they should have a goat. They should have a favorite fighter they support, and it really, to me, it doesn't matter who it is. Just support a woman fighter, and that's what's important.
dang, dang. Hey, see, TJ, Roger took that. He turned a positive. Oh, no, he turned a negative into a positive, man. See that, TJ? Nah, that's cool. But TJ, man, that's pretty awesome of you, man. Thanks, man. I've even had TJ on the show before. Definitely a real intellectual, and he actually says he want to come on again. When he's not busy because he drives those trucks, man. But he got a lot of good insight. And Keith Brown has been on the show a few times, and he's actually a boxer.
Uh
He's an
huh.
amateur boxer going pro soon. So
Cool,
yeah,
cool. Hey, I would talk with those guys anytime. They can come on and we can chat it up, man. It's all good.
so man, this is the guys. This is what kind of manager. That's what he is, guys. Hey, and not a lot of managers that do that, man. They or just period. They don't do a lot, period. But Roger's out there, man. He's hitting the pavement. He's presenting new opportunities for Valentina. Just a lot of different things that he's doing to help promote and push Valentina in the right direction. So I know Valentina is definitely thankful. And I ask her, what does Roger mean to you, Valentina? And then I'll have to watch you get all teary eyed, because she's probably gonna have a lot to say. I mean, she probably is. She's gonna have a lot to say. Um, okay, so now here's a very interesting question, and this is a question that I've been just biting my lip on. Okay, there are about three people been in the comment thread saying Antonina Shevchenko and the UFC.
Man, y'all are always on that subject. Well, here I'm going to tell you. You can hear it from the horse's mouth. Antonina, her priority right now, as soon as she gets an opponent, as soon as Lion Fight gets a venue, she is going to defend her Lion Fight title. That's numero uno. Now, in the interim, if there's opportunities that have come up, she's fought MMA, and of course, it makes a good story for everybody for Antonina to go to the UFC. I mean, it makes a great story, and Antonina has to make that decision. Is Antonina good enough? She absolutely is good enough. But when Antonina is ready, if she was ready, that opportunity I'm sure would come up. But she has made commitments and she plans to honor those commitments. And we'll see. But to think, let me tell you this, and I'll say this, and I'll kind of frame this. I get asked this by every major media all the time. After as soon as she had her last MMA fight, they're wanting to know, is Antonina going to UFC? So it's not just, it's not just the your subscribers or you asking that question. It's constant. Antonina has been offered fights by pretty much every organization in the world of some level, whether it be MMA, kickboxing, or Muay Thai, at some point in time in the last 3 years. So I'll just leave it at that.
Oh man. So he's kind of left a cliffhanger for you guys. I mean, it's a good cliffhanger. I mean, and you might have to do some investigation to kind of read into that. Gosh, man, what did you guys hear? That's all I got to ask. What did you guys hear? And she been offered by almost every single major organization. So what does that tell you?
So let me ask you, what did you think of her last fight?
When she fought Valerie,
Yep.
Valerie Demerge,
Uh huh.
she completely dominated the girl. Actually, you know what? She broke the girls. I think Antonina. I don't know because Antonina didn't do any trash talking. She didn't do a lot. I think this girl was just like, I don't know, man. Maybe she was overwhelmed, man. And then Antonina got in, and you can see even from the first strike, man, Antonina completely just dominated this girl. And she tried. There were points in the fight when Valerie actually tried to make it a fight, but then Antonina started taking away weapons, and then Antonina with those leg kicks was, making Valerie just uncomfortable the whole fight, man. I was like,
Hmm.
wow,
Hmm.
man.
Right. Well, Antonina, like I told you before, she's an incredible striker. She has a degree in Western boxing. And I mentioned that to you. So she has studied, not just on an amateur level, but on a university level to study the art and science of boxing. So she she is a wealth of knowledge. I mean, what's really interesting, Antonina and Valentina were here, and Pavel was here, and uh, Valentina and Pavel, they had to travel, and while they were traveling, Antonina was offered a boxing match, um, professional boxing match, not kickboxing or whatever, but a professional boxing match. So, I mean, it was like short notice, and so at the time she was here and she wasn't able to drive, so I was taking her every day to train. And man, I was watching, Antonia was going and training jujitsu and doing some other things, but she started preparing for her fight. And we had there was a boxing trainer at the gym that she was training at. He was setting up sparring, but she was self training. And I was like, man, I've never seen anybody like with that much discipline to like push themselves, like just by, without a coach, standing over them and pushing them. And I'll tell you, I like totally gained just an immense amount of appreciation of what type of athlete and what kind of person she was, how much character she had. And I mean, it was incredible. And she was sparring against some really good boxers that have fought on HBO. Uh, there's one actually, he's kind of a big time, not the highest level, but he's getting up there from Houston, and he had an undefeated record. I can't remember his name offhand, but they were sparring in preparation for that fight, and I just saw Antonina's technical ability, and then the other boxing coaches, they're like, man, she's really technical, she's really tough, and she's really good, and it was really, that's where I kind of like, man, she's an incredible striker. And then when she got signed with Lion Fight and got to go and start doing those, having her Muay Thai fights, I mean, her opponents they're not pushovers. And even her last two MMA fights, neither one of those two ladies that she fought, I mean, Anissa Hadouи she's a world class striker. I mean, she's got the pedigree from Europe, fighting an infusion. She's fought the best, you know, in that part of the world has to offer up out of, the Holland era up there. And she's fought in China, she's fought everywhere. So she's no slouch. It's just when they fight against Antonina can make you fight her fight no matter how bad you don't want to. And the same with the girl from Valerie. She's tough. Watch that fight. She's like a tank. She took some big shots from Antonina, and she moved, and she was a legit opponent. I mean, sometimes records don't always tell the story. I mean, you can watch some of these fighters that are building up an undefeated record, and you look at their opponents, and as soon as their opponents throw a 1-2, the person balls up against the cage, they cover up, and they never move. They never move their feet. They never move their head. And then the fight goes on. You get a TKO win, and you know everybody's hurrah. But watch Antonina's opponent. You watch she was moving. She had several things going against her when Antonina started opening up her offense. And again, Antonina, that's her primary focus has been Muay Thai, but she's an excellent MMA striker and MMA fighter, you know, as well. But our focus is what Antonina wants to do right now is hopefully we have some fights to announce here pretty soon, but she wants to go back and defend that title because that belt's hers. That line fight belt. She has a WMC belt. She has a Phoenix belt. Right now, she's a title holder of three belts. So she wants to defend those in Muay Thai, and you never know what the future will bring. But she is focused and committed to Muay Thai right now.
Scott Kent, you heard that. I bet that's gonna make you happy, huh, Scotty? All right. Well, Scott, that's just how it is. So, okay. So Reggie the Tree, he asked, Roger, can you explain Valentina's work ethic and fighting spirit? What sets her apart from, other fighters you've been associated with or fighters that that competes with Valentina? Like what's different about Valentina?
Well, I'm going to tell you kind of, it goes back to your Pavel has a plan. It's just Valentina's work ethic. It's incredible. And, it's like Valentina's like a samurai. That's kind of how if you've ever watched that movie, The Last Samurai, how people are very disciplined and they're committed about improving themselves, and it goes back to kind of the philosophy of that you have so much. I told you this off air, but you know having like a philosophy, a life philosophy that every day you wake up and you have X amount of energy to spend, and it's where you spend that energy in your life. Some people they spend their energy in life on negative stuff or getting involved in stuff they shouldn't be involved in. But Valentina's one. She really focuses on self improvement and self discipline about her craft, and it's something that she loves. I mean, she was born to be like a warrior or a martial artist, and it's there. She never says anything bad about anybody. She like has like a really like have people have energy or like a spirit or a light associated with them. She's like a white light or a brilliant colored light that just her personality and her spirit. But her work ethic's incredible. She'll work most guys into the ground. I mean, her training regiment now, she trains with two professional fighters who are no slouches that she trains with routinely, and they're doing a round. One does a round, they go out. Another one comes in fresh. They would do a round with her, and they both fight at 135. She, fights now at 125, and then she also one of the other fighters that I manage. He's in the UFC. He's a 125er, and he walking around about 150 right now. He trains with Valentina, and he fights on February the 16th in Austin. His name's Roberto Sanchez, excellent grappler. They train together. So she is just an incredible athlete. She will not quit. You would have to kill her to make her quit, no matter how hard the workout is. And that's what kind of the marriage of where when we started working with Rose and Rose started working when we went up to Denver and Rose started working with us. Rose went through those same workouts and she had never experienced anything quite like that before. And then it just became second nature to go through those workouts and all of that. And so Rose, that's why I always say Rose kind of like blossomed. Excuse me. She she grew as a fighter and a martial artist, and you know, and now you see the result. Rose's champion, and of course, I and our team believes Valentina will be champion here very soon.
Okay, yeah, and Valentina, had a lot of posts about, that she's gonna beat Joanna probably even more convincingly the second time. Now,
Hmm.
Roger, how do you feel, man? Since you're close to Rose and Pat, how do you feel, with Joanna and Jacek? She's already the favorite coming into this fight.
I think that's awesome. And I'll tell you why. I mean, Rose, said we've spent a fair amount of time with those two, and I talked to Rose and Pat. We don't talk every day, but I mean, we talk, and Rose is the type. If you're not inviting Rose to the party, I'm going to try to say this right. Like, Rose didn't mind showing up and ruining everybody's party, in the last fight. And so if people start doubting her again, that actually plays in Rose's favor of being kind of the underdog and giving her a little extra, kind of hump. Because Rose is legitimate. I hear you guys, and I say you guys as a whole of subscribers here, media, forums, just taking in information. Still, it hasn't sunk in, but Rose has grown, not just as a fighter or spiritually, but she's matured as a woman, as an individual, um, and she's also matured physically. I mean, when the training that she did with Valentina, kind of now, I'm too bad Eric's not here because you and I could go sparring and he can be the mediator about conditioning. But
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. We're gonna get into that.
when we do these workouts, like I'll give you an example what Rose was going through with Valentina. Common workout is just the workout is 2.5 hours, and it's 2.5 hours of work. It's not 2.5 hours of, well, I'm gonna go and spar a little and go get some water and meander back and wrap my hands. And I mean, I see that all the time about people preparing in a fight camp. Everybody has their different philosophy of what they need to do. I just know what ours is. And so Rose, during that time, I mean, her body changed. She gained weight. She got thicker. I mean, she gained more weight in her legs and her upper body. She got muscles. I mean, just the kind of work that we do, because the conditioning is like skill-based conditioning is what we're big believers in. And Rose was a part of all that, and she grew. So don't expect her to show up ever again as like the little, someone may think she's a wafy or frail, but or skinny. Rose is strong and she's filled out, and she's, in my opinion, she's like a perfect size of a 115 fighter. She presents a lot of problems with her length, her height, and her density.
Now, Roger, this is the elephant in the room, man, and we got to ask this question. You got to ask:
Okay.
did Joanna and Jacek tap to strikes?
She
Did she
tapped,
tap?
man.
Oh
She may
man.
not she may have not consciously tapped, but she tapped. Can't, unless it was some special effect. But it looked like it looked like, if it looked like a tap, it sounded like a tap, it was a tap.
Well, I mean, Roger, I mean, you're making fun of her. It, she
No, no,
says,
no, no, no. I'm not making fun of her. I think Joanna is a great fighter.
but the coach
I'm
is.
just saying. I mean, but the situation. I mean, I mean, look. It's like the guys you see, where they've stole something on camera and they go, "Did you steal this?" No, didn't do it. Well, what's this? Uh, or a kid, like a kid handing the cookie jar. I mean, as you say, how you going to explain it? It's on video. I mean,
Yeah, it's on video.
whether you're conscious or what, that that took, that, I mean, it happened. Now,
Yeah,
that's
Rose.
just that's my opinion, but I
Mm,
think she tapped.
Rose should have just gave her a swift kick in the ass too. While she was snapping. That probably would have
No,
ended
no,
the round.
no.
So.
Rose did enough. Rose did enough, and and it was such a storybook. I mean, I talked to Pat. I didn't talk to Rose. I mean, but I talked to Pat and I talked to some of Rose's coaches during that week. We had some communication. We sent texts and we had some phone calls, and you know that was an interesting week. But Rose, people just don't get Rose, and To be honest with you, when I first met Rose, I met her. It was really interesting. I mean, when Pat and them wanted Rose to train with Valentina, I flat told them, I said, I don't know if it's a good idea. Most of the girls can't train with her for any length of time because the training's so tough. I mean, even the guys have trouble. So I just don't know. And Rose was took it as like a personal challenge. Pat went up to her and said, Rose, they really don't think you can hang with Valentina. I mean, literally, that's what he did, and reverse psychology or whatever. And she took it like, no, I'm gonna come. I'm not missing. So Rose, she trained. I mean, she never missed a day. She missed maybe one day in 22 weeks of training. 6 days a week with Valentina. So, you're like I said is. Well, first time I saw Rose, like early in a couple days, and they were sparring and different things. I mean, and this isn't saying anything that you guys haven't seen on the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, Rose started crying. She's just an emotional person of dealing with things. And I was like, oh man, this is like, oh, I didn't know how to feel about it, and it kind of upset me a little bit. And then as time went on, I got to see Rose's process, and I was like, Rose, that's okay. That's just part of her routine. And um, and so there were people reporting that Joanna was getting to Rose, and Rose was in a mess and pieces. Only thing they did is fuel fire for Rose, and if Rose had any tears or anything pop out, that's just like a fire trying to be contained, inside of a like a I don't know, like a gas tank, catching on fire. It's going to blow up eventually, but rather than blowing up, Rose just let the emotions ooze out as tears, but wasn't because she was upset or afraid or any of that stuff. I mean, when somebody's talking mad shit, you probably just want to go and slap the hell out of somebody, but obviously you can't do that, or you won't be fighting. And I can't. I'm not going to speak for Rose there, but I'm just telling you, Rose is she's a tough person. She's been through a lot, and you know, obviously there was a lot of talk, but we'll see what happens the next fight. I mean, I think if Joanna goes in and talks and tries the same thing, it's not going to affect Rose. I mean, it'll be good for the fans to talk about, and if she doesn't say a word, it won't affect Rose. So no matter what she does, she's in I think in a worse place than Rose is on this, and hopefully the betting lines get really wacko that she's that Rose is the underdog because I'll slap a bet on there in a heartbeat. That's no worries.
Yeah, I think I bet about 200-300 on Rose myself. But Joanna's gonna come in and she's gonna say, "I'm the queen. I'm the queen. I get the belt. I am the champion." I mean, she's still saying that now, Roger. Like she's still
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
that
She she
she's the champ. She still believes that this woman believes, Roger, she's got the belt. And
she's
and, and
still getting promoted as if she was a champion.
yeah, and I'm sitting back and I'm
So
like,
so
man,
that's
is she delusional?
but
Is she got drinking some American juice? I mean, what's
no,
going on?
it's like one of those. It's her status that she built up, and this is to her credit. So don't take this any other way. Her dominance that she had with other fighters, that she had with her record and with her performance, and she got the machine behind her, so to speak. I mean, she's managed by WME. I mean, they're looking to put her in the right magazine, the right place, the right time, the right everything, and they're promoting her like a champion should be promoted. I mean, she's a big star in Poland, here, so I mean, she's still getting promoted quite a bit. So there's things that Rose doesn't, she hasn't got, time hasn't worked. But I think it'll be like lightning. It's going to have to strike twice, and then they're going to say, you know what, we really need to be, we need to be pushing Rose. We need to be promoting Rose because she is legit. So it's a crazy thing, but yeah, she's still getting promoted. It's just wait till we get close to the fight. You're going to see the same thing. I think she was on the MMA. I think she was on the Ariel Hawani show, the MMA show hour today with Ariel Hawani, and they were talking about, she was talking about her bad weight cut on the last fight, and that affected her fight, and you know. as a professional fighter, you really have to own. You have to have a good team, but when it comes to your weight or your health or your body, you kind of have to own that stuff. It isn't like it's your first weight cut,
She
but
got to
like
wear
I
that. Yeah, she got to wear that ass whooping. Come on. It's
Well, yeah, but
almost like
it's
she
like
took
I was it's
for that.
like I was telling you before about weight cuts. Joanna's a big, she's a big. I don't even know how she makes 115. I've seen her at several events. I've seen her several times. She probably walks around at 140. I bet on a regular basis, easily.
Well, you remember when she wanted to fill in for Amanda Nunes the first time? You know, she was weighing 137 pounds
I
when
believe
she
it.
was
Yeah,
trying to
so
make that
close to
fight.
140. Yeah, close to 140. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that doesn't surprise me at all. So that's a big weight cut. Now, again, you deal with, all the issues that a female athlete has. You're dealing with timing, you're dealing with all kind of hormones that can happen. There's a lot of things that can pop up that can adversely affect a weight cut. All that has to
See,
be managed. So
but this is nothing new to Joanna Jacek, Roger.
that's that's what I'm saying.
She's had these
That's what
weight
I'm
cuts before, dangerous weight
that's
cuts. You
Well,
know,
if you're cutting that much, that's what I'm telling you is the friends may find you and come back with you when those other pounds come back. And so I told you this maybe a year, and maybe I didn't tell you, but I've told some other people asked me about if Joanna would go to 125, and I said ultimately I think she will, because as she gets older and as she does more of these weight cuts at 115, I think her body will drive her to go up to 125. I don't think she'll have a choice in the matter. I think her performance will suffer at 115. When you start cutting all that weight, yes, when you cut weight and you are dehydrated or don't hydrate correctly, you are more susceptible to a knockout. But at the same time, at the highest level, I mean, our team manages humidity. We're managing humidity, elevation. I mean, there's so many factors that go into all these fights. At the highest level, you need to manage all that. So, whoever made the error, if there wasn't, enough coordination between the team, I mean, those are all things that are difficult that have to be, somebody has to manage it. And so, if a manager is not doing it, um, sometimes it's difficult. That part of the process, there's coaches involved or the athletes involved in that stuff. Um, managers not really involved, shouldn't be involved in anything like that. But at the same time, if something's not going right, everybody as a team should start rallying. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? And why can't I shed these pounds? Because those pounds, they just don't all of a sudden show up, or they can't. If they don't disappear, I mean, there's, I mean, there's reasons a woman's body will act differently than a man about holding on to pounds, because it's just that's just the way it is. And again, there's some timing in that of some normal events that women have that men don't have. All those things come into play, and so they have to be considered and managed, by the athlete and by the teams. So, again, I don't know the situation, but I do know that if you're dehydrated and you get hit, you're more susceptible to be knocked out. That I do know. And she said she cut 15 pounds in 14 hours or 14 pounds in 15 hours, one of the two. That's a lot for someone her size. That's a drastic cut for someone her size.
yeah, she could have died.
So now then the question is, and again, she made choices and her team made choices to have her take. I mean, she did photo shoots and went on to all these shows. I mean, that fight week, I mean, this is something that we manage, and we have to work with the UFC to figure out what works for us, what works out for them to make everyone happy. And sometimes it's simply of moving things around, of timing and different commitments, or talking about things in advance and having communication like, well, can we do it, before we go off to fight week, as opposed to during fight week. I mean, there's a lot of different things that come into play. I mean, it's fight week is not easy for any of these fighters. I mean, uh, you see the kind of countdown to the octagon, but that's just a glimpse of what the camps let you see. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into this, and And we can talk about this on another show or whatever, or even try to even cover it during a fight week where we're not so intrusive in one of our fighters' camps, but to give you guys like some behind the scenes of just what the schedule is and what happens. I mean, it's when we get there, like we're actually flying to Brazil tomorrow. And so we'll fly to Brazil tomorrow, and then we'll get there and we'll acclimate, do training, and then Tuesday typically is when all the magic starts for these fights. That's the official check-in, and then it's like nonstop between Tuesday until Saturday night. It's nonstop, and the higher you are in the rankings, or the higher you are in the card, if you're a main event or a co-main or on the main card, obviously your commitments for media and doing other things is way more than someone like on a fight pass or on the undercard. But still they have things that they have to do, as well, but it's not even a fraction of what like a main event or a co-main event has to do.
Okay. Dang, man. Wow, man. Y'all, you getting like a first class education, guys, on what happens behind the scenes with the weight cuts, how the cars are put out, guys. It's pretty intense, man. I mean, I'm enjoying every minute of this. Got a question from a guy named Music Playlist, and it's a pretty cool name. I heard Valentina say she doesn't do weights. Can you ask if she does any pull-ups or other body weight exercises? That's a good question.
Well, you know I don't have to ask her, I can tell you. I mean, Valentina does very specific, like I told you before, skill based conditioning. So, like, if you grapple or you wrestle, I mean, you look at most wrestlers, a lot of wrestlers. I mean, they're they're very physically fit. Even a lot of jujitsu guys, they're doing. Some people lift weights, but she doesn't lift weights. I'll just tell you flat out, she just doesn't do it. It's her time is spent improving and sharpening her skill. But if you look at her physically, you would think that she did, like her biceps or her shoulders. All that's from grappling and nutrition.
That's it.
That's it.
So that's how Valentina is gonna explain this one. That, that.
She can explain it. She can explain it. I mean, there's a little more. There's a little more to it than that. But
So no arm curls, no reverse pull-ups. Using a bar. So she doesn't do any of that stuff.
nope, nope.
Dang.
How many bars do you see inside that octagon that you're going to fight with?
There's zero bars in there. There's a
Yep.
fence. There's a
How
cage.
many how many weights are you going to fight inside that cage?
You're not gonna fight any weights, but some of that stuff. Some of that stuff is good though. It is good for like
I
some of
I
it is
hear
good.
I hear you. I played Division 1 football in college, and we did the off season. We hit the weights, and then we played during. We had our 2 days, or we had our spring training, we had our summer workouts, and we had our season. And the only time we ever lifted weights in season was after a game. We'd come in the next day and like play around with weights. So again, I see. You know, again, I get to see a lot of things. It may not work for every fighter, but I see a lot of people doing a lot of things, and that you get coaches that come in that have like no experience with fighting or building these cardio systems, these different type of systems, and they bring their education. Like they may have I mean, we work with some people that have PhDs in research in different nutrition. They have specialties and like maybe another sport, like for example, an endurance sport, and then they're coming over and trying to apply that to other sports. Some may do football, like, because a football is kind of a short burst. Like for example, I was an offensive lineman, so our workouts are definitely going to be different than what a receiver would need. So but some strength conditioning programs, they throw them in the same one, put them, turn the mixer on, and hope for the best. So but as far as like the athletes that we work with, I mean, it varies. There are people that do different things, and that's why I was hoping Eric would be on here is when we were talking about, uh, like Francis and his fight, how he ended up, gassing. I was trading some text in your comment section, but you know, Francis had the best facility in the world. He was on doing road work on those machines, hooked up to, in a altitude chamber, doing everything. But the difference that he didn't have in all that training at the institute, wherever, he did not have a 250-pound wrestler laying on him and trying to figure out how to breathe. So you can run, you can sprint, you can do all that, but if you can't deal with the psychological aspect of having another person grab a hold of you, hold you down, throw you around, and build your cardio with that, it's different. That's what I talk about, skill-based conditioning, because a dumbbell or a machine or roading or whatever, they won't hit you back, or they won't hold you down and put you in a uncomfortable position where you can't breathe. So does that answer any of your question? That's like a philosophy about just the time that you have in a day of spending of what's going to benefit you. If you're deficient, like in grappling, with this team, this is my personal philosophy, and I do, as I tell you, reserve the right to be wrong. But if you're spending 4 hours in the gym lifting weights and you're not spending 4 hours grappling, then you're doing yourself a disservice. That's just my opinion.
See, it's something, like weights, they do, they do have their place because, I used them to increase, my power when I was actually, silly
Mm-hmm.
enough to get in there and get punched in the face. But,
Uh-huh.
I use it to increase my power, especially, hang cleans, I was using them. But yeah, I
Uh-huh.
agree, you shouldn't, 4 hours in a weight room, that's crazy. Even for any kind of sport, that's crazy. You got to get
Uh-huh.
out and you got to actually practice what you're doing, you got to actually go
Uh-huh.
perform it to get better at it. So yeah, I agree with that.
Uh-huh.
I,
No.
I think it all has a place because I think everybody is different. Like
Oh,
some people,
that's exactly what I said. But I see people. Again, this is personal. This is just my observation of I watch athletes and I see them. They say, "Well, we're going to go run, this amount of time, or we're going to go do this." I mean, running a little bit's no problem, but you start trying to do road work for miles and miles, especially being you have to evaluate each athlete. But I can tell you now, Valentina is stronger than most men that do lift weights at her size. I can tell you that from experience, and the guys that train with her will vouch for it. And she's stronger than most women. And it's like there's a term we have down here in the South, and it's like called country strong. And it's like with a wrestler, you grab a wrestler who may never lift a weight or don't lift weights, they're like freaky strong. And like when I grew up, in the summertime, I didn't lift weights that much in the summer, but I went and I worked and I threw hay bales through the summer to make money, on, with my uncle. So, you know, I guess technically that's lifting weights, but it's different than lifting a dumbbell than like throwing something big around like that. So, technically, if you're picking somebody up, walking them around, throwing them to the ground, you're lifting weights. You're just not doing it with a static weight. You're doing it with a dynamic force that's moving. Like dead weight or something else that's moving. So I think the perception about weightlifting is just think the same thing's happening. I think it just the understanding versus a traditional versus a non-traditional. I mean, it's like selling a program. It's really not that sexy to sell a program for weightlifting of you going in there and grappling. But if you have a systematic, well, you go here and you can do lift weights here and you can do this because in college football they used to joke around and say, well, you're not building meat muscles. So we didn't do many curls in our strength and conditioning. And in college we had one of the at the time, which is many years ago, one of the better in the country. We were close to the Olympic Center in Colorado Springs, so we got to get access to pretty high level training. So, it's everything has its place and time, but during a fight camp, weights don't have a place. during a fight camp.
Mm,
That's just my opinion.
okay. So we would always do them like in the beginning, like in the very early stages of it. But then like more like a peak like cycle when you taper off, and then you just stop doing that stuff altogether. Um, and I know that's what I know when I got my first certification in weightlifting, that's kind of what they told us. But then some of that stuff doesn't apply because it's general, like they're teaching you general stuff, like it's the one size fit all. But then once you really get into conditioning and strength, and then everybody's different because some people
Sure.
they don't respond to weights. They do better with plyometrics. There's
Sure.
just
Oh,
people that's trying to
sure.
build general fitness and strength. Not. And then some people they're much more technician. So if you put too much weight on them, or they get too strong, then they lose some of their flexibility, which affects their
Sure.
technicality. So it's just I don't know. The people are just very very different. And
Exactly.
see, could you imagine putting Valentina in there with a Francis Ngannou and them working out together, and Valentina turns into a damn muscle head, and well, her technique would probably go through, probably wouldn't be that great. She'd be stiff, couldn't do some of the movements, and somebody would, land a shot on her,
Well, our boxing coaches, that I worked with before,
Mm.
thought weightlifting was counter to fluidity and with striking. So because of the tenseness, and you know that was just his. That was again his opinion. Now, did you do push-ups? Yep, did absolutely did push-ups. That's and that's I think like for example, the best way to explain Valentina's you know workout or strength and conditioning is she's not tied to a gym. She can do it anywhere in the world, any place, any setting. So that's basically what I'm saying.
So she don't have to go buy a 24/7 gym membership, a Planet Fitness. She can go to Planet Pavel or Planet Park, and
Right.
you can just do whatever she wants to do.
Right. I mean, seriously. And that's, again, like I was telling you, is developing a cardio with a 250-pound guy on laying on top of you. Part of that is knowing how to move and not have that guy take your energy away from you, but at the same time, breathing there versus running. You could, hit your VO2 max, could be awesome on a bike or awesome doing sprints or whatever. But this said, you know, let's go back to this, coach. And this is something to think about that they don't share in like a weightlifting program. But the psychology of fighting, or even like intensive grappling, when you know somebody is going to hurt you, your heart rate's going to start elevating with that person standing in front of you, whether you know it or not, as opposed to a force. Now, when you're in a fight, let's go back to the fight week. You're dealing with all this the whole week. You're seeing your opponent during the whole week. You bump into your opponent, you bump into coaches, you see this stuff. But fight night, I mean, then you have your face-offs and all this stuff you're managing, and you're managing a weight cut and recovery. But fight night, again, this is something that people may or may not have ever experienced, but you're in the back, you're in a very small room, and you're focusing, and every fighter has a routine of what they're doing. Their team is focusing. Everybody has to be on the same page. I mean, all this, you're preparing for battle. So most people are going to have some type of psychological and physiological response to that. So people gassing, actually, in my opinion, it probably starts even in the back before you ever even get in a cage, because your heart rate gets elevated. You go out and you're waiting in a hallway for them to call you. They're shouting instruction to you. They're saying, stand on this tape right here. We're going to go out. We're rolling out in a minute. Before that, you're getting a countdown in the back. They're saying, okay, we're going out in 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. Everybody rushes out. They said, all right, when you get out, you can't walk. We gotta go. We gotta go. We gotta go. You're gonna have to move. You're gonna have to move. So
Mm.
you have people barking all this stuff at you. And this again, I'm talking about what you're gonna have to deal with in a fight. So everybody comes out. You got all these cameras. You got everything. And as you're walking down this hallway, that everything's quiet, it starts getting louder and louder and louder and louder for an athlete. Then you walk out, and then all of a sudden the stadium goes, ah. I mean, everybody's going to respond differently, but most people are going to respond. Their heart rate, they're going to start feeling adrenaline. All these things are going to start kicking in. Their body systems are going to start changing as they approach that cage. They get in. All this is a buildup, and then when they get in, then there's like another change of gear of their heart rate and their adrenaline and all these things. None of that can ever be simulated really truly through any amount of training, but you try to get it as close as you can and push people as hard as you can to simulate that. And I think Pavel does that probably better than anybody I've seen traveling around. I mean, there's really good coaches, but I mean, we've had a lot of people reach out to him after some of these fights to start working with him. So um, obviously they believe the same.
Yeah, well, Pavel has a plan. I keep telling everybody, Pavel
But I
has a
mean,
plan.
most people, I mean, like what I described there, most people don't think about all that stuff. Then you get into there, and then you actually have to fight somebody. And then you have to deal with a world class fighter in front of you, and all these things. So nothing but respect to anyone that gets in that cage. I mean, outside, there's antics and stuff that goes on, or who ducked who or who what. And I personally, I can't understand why all that goes on. I mean, if you're a fighter and you're gonna miss 6 months, not fight for 6 months because you said no, well, and then complain that you're not don't have any money, it doesn't make any sense to me. I can just say that matchmakers are more patient than I would be and stuff like that. But
Yeah, you can't duck fights and think people are gonna respect you, and then think that it's everybody else's fault that you didn't want to fight.
so
Yeah,
so back, does that answer anything about weightlifting? It probably doesn't, but that was the original
yeah.
question that spun us off on this thing.
No, no, it was a good question, and it was a very informative response. I mean, so because you're on the inside looking at these fighters. I mean, you see them, and you don't just see Valentina. You're seeing other fighters.
Sure, sure,
When you
sure.
go, because you even told me you were like, okay, JJ Aldridge, you and you kind of, I said, no, I'm going with Taylor, and you didn't even get into it. You just said, okay. And you kind of, but you got the inside information because
Sure, sure,
you were
sure. I
working with
mean,
Valentina for those weeks as well, and man, JJ just went in there and acted like a surgeon, man. That's what she did.
seeing that's again, not take, you can't take credit. JJ has her coaches that she works with on a routine basis, but training with Valentina over that time, it doesn't do anything but help you because you're not gonna when you leave that kind of training, you're gonna see everything. You're not gonna be like mystical of striking or clinching. Like still, I heard people, well, Rose isn't gonna be able to clinch. She knocked out Joanna, but she can't clinch. Let's see a clinch game unfold, and let's see. We'll talk about it after the fight. What
See,
happens?
I feel like Rose. I feel like Rose Namajunas, she's not getting her just due. And it's like, how more impressive can you go in there and see? Let me break it down. Okay, you go in, everybody, including myself, and I think Eric too. Eric was trying to play both sides, but Eric can't get out of this. He was saying that Joanna was going to win too, and everybody Joanna was going to win. Joanna was coming in, she had her chest stuck out. I mean, she was, rubbing her testicles all over the place because she thought she was just the shit. PG-13 channel. That's what she thought, and she goes in, she get knocked out. Now, Roger, all these excuses. Well, it was my nutritionist's fault. Well, no, I really didn't tap, but I was getting my ass whooped. But I really didn't tap. Well, now it's this, it's that. Well, now I'm going to be the real champion because now I got a nutritional team. I mean, it's like a cluster. Okay, I ain't gonna say it. It's like a circus with this woman, and
it's not just
and I think and it. But you saw what Rose did, man. Come on. Rose broke this woman down, and this is not Joanna's first rodeo with weight cuts. I mean, we already said this. She's already had these weight cuts, and she go in and she'll dominate a fighter. And how come we never heard about these weight cuts when she beat the hell out of Carla Esparza? How come we didn't hear about, the complaints of all this other stuff going on when she fought Claudia Gadelha and beat Claudia twice? But now she gets knocked out by Rose, and now there's an excuse, you know?
sure, sure. No, I mean, look at where Joanna's role in her promotion. She did a, you know, she did. an awesome job promoting that fight. Think about it. Like I said, if you go look back and look at the amount of time, the UFC, they're definitely going to let you promote the fight as much as they're as much as you want to. They're going to let you do it. So, at the same time, I mean, you have to balance. You have to, pick those times or pick what you can. Not that you always have the option, to pick and choose what you want to do, but sometimes it's just having a common sense conversation of what makes sense. But and sometimes that you have to, you may have to push back on something and get it, like I said, moved. Doesn't mean no. You don't have to say no. You just have to move it. What makes sense, and it may have made sense for her training camp at the time. You don't know that, but she did a lot. I mean, she promoted the fight. She made it very interesting. A lot of people were excited. She's going to do the exact same thing for this fight because she's going to benefit from doing it. I mean, it's you have to have. She had a great. Joanna had a great opponent with Rose and Rose's story. I think she went out of bounds. I mean, they start talking and they don't really know what all they're saying unless they're just a bad, person. And I don't know. I know exactly what happened behind the scenes. And if Rose and Pat ever want to tell you, they'll be the ones to go public with what happened behind the scenes with and her coaches too. But there was some crazy stuff going on and surprising stuff. And so I think Joanna had been used to playing kind of like the Jedi mind master trick on all her opponents because she doesn't just play it on the camera. She's playing it behind the scenes too. She's playing it at fighter meetings and walking down the hall, making sure she's in the hallway, coming into your locker room. Those are all kind of shit that's out of bounds. But all that stuff, she did. And so part of that is just playing in the psyche of your opponent, and it backfired. She does it again, it'll backfire again. We'll have to see how she responds, not being able to go and get into the mind of Rose. You'll have
But
to see. That to me is going to be more intriguing of the story than anything. Is how is she going to deal with somebody that's not going to give her anything? And that's what Rose did. I mean, we had all these discussions, and Pat is like very in tune with Rose. Pat's like, they're like yin and yang. I mean, they're funny. They're fun to be around, but you know, I mean, it didn't take like a rocket scientist. It's like Rose. They think you're an emotional fighter. They're going to try to, she's going to try to break you down and beat you before the fight happens. And Rose didn't hear that one time. Rose heard that 100 times. So she heard that from her coaches. Pat, you know, I've had conversations with her about it, at lunch, different things, and it just isn't going to work. So now you got to see, damn, I threw my best shit talking game at somebody PJ 13, where I broke everybody mentally. I had them, I beat them before the fight ever happened, and I couldn't beat this girl, and she's going to run into this, she's going to run into a Rose now. It's like cliff diving. First time you do it, it's kind of like, whoops, I'm not sure I want to do this or not. But second time, if you jump off the same cliff and everything's right and the tide's the same, you're not going to have the same anxiety about it or even wonder about it. So I think Rose is, I think it'll last. I think the fight will last longer. I think it'll probably last. I think it'll probably go about 2 or 3 rounds, and then I think Rose will finish the fight again. That's just me, but I don't think it'll end so quickly. I don't think.
okay, well, man, but you know what? I'm not a huge Joanna fan, but I will tell you though, it's pretty impressive to go 14 wins undefeated, right?
Yeah,
In MMA, it's impressive to do that, but you were using only a few of the facets of MMA, like the striking and the kick, the punching and kicking.
don't.
Like that, I mean, man, she did that for 14 fights, and it's like nobody could even come close to her within those 14 fights. I say maybe Claudia did the second fight, and I thought Carolina Kovacevic got really close to finishing her. But man, she did that for 14 fights, went undefeated. That's impressive. Could you imagine if she ever really learned the other facets of MMA?
I
Maybe a good
think.
ground game.
I think you're. I think. I think if you look deeper, Joanna has an excellent takedown defense. Excellent, excellent. So she's tall and long, and she if you watch her, she's really good against the cage. She's good at her takedown defense against cages. Outstanding. And her takedown defense is good in general because she's long and can manage the distance. But I think a lot of people underestimate Joanna on the ground.
Mm.
I think you would be surprised. I think Joanna, I don't know, but I thought I heard someone mention she was a purple belt on the ground in jiu-jitsu, and purple belts are legit.
Well, she
You know,
don't legitly use it at all.
well, just because you don't use it doesn't mean you don't have it. Just like Valentina fought until she used a little bit of her jiu-jitsu on Juliana Pena. No one knew anything about Valentina's ground game
But
at
see,
all.
I kind of called this fight though, and I said that this fight was gonna be it was gonna be a kickboxing match in the octagon. I knew it because I felt like Joanna was not gonna try to employ any kind of ground game. Even
She
when she was taken down, like she fought Esparza, she got taken down, and she wasn't more trying to, maybe set Carl up in a guard. She wasn't trying to do that. She was scrambling to get back to her feet to start striking again. And I'm like, well, God Almighty, man,
Rose.
why won't she try to do any of the? Because if you're in MMA, don't you have to know some of that stuff. So I'm wondering why didn't Joanna actually try to employ some of those tactics?
Well, if you are, sometimes it's just a trick of being just good enough. And, it's like you would be dumb to go and say, you know what, this other my opponent's a black belt, trained all this time. Let's say I'm a purple belt. I may be really good, but I'm that much better at striking. And again, it goes back to managing energy systems. Some people are cardio machines in grappling. You cannot tire them out. I mean, we have guys that come into to the BJJ gym that are fit and ripped, and I mean, you look at them, you're thinking, man, that's the most fit guy. And then we got guys that are just overweight that are black belts that they get grappling with the other guys, and the other guys are dying. But you would never believe it until you actually watched it. So different people have different responses of how their energy systems work at different times, and striking uses a total different energy system than grappling does, completely different. And so some people are more comfortable. I mean, since striking is more beautiful, that's Joanna's bread and butter. I mean, she's a good striker. So I mean, that's where I think people draw the line, and they're making some ill assumptions, is that Joanna is a trash fighter because she lost. No, not at all.
No,
She's
see, I ain't calling
a
for that.
great. No, no, no. But I mean, fans, they may turn and say, "Oh, well, Joanna's lost it," or she never was. She was a hype job. Joanna's no hype job. She's legit. Rose, like I said, Rose got to go and fly under the radar and develop without that big push. She got the big push for a while when she was off the Ultimate Fighter, and it was too much for her. She was 19, like 19 years old when all that was happening. I mean, that's a lot for a 19-year-old person to deal with all that, fame. You got people coming in telling you you're the best, you're the next Ronda Rousey, you're all these things. I mean, that's difficult for a 19-year-old. You got people coming at you fast and hard, and you're still developing not only as a fighter but as a person. As a 19, I can almost tell you if someone thinks that's older. Now, when they're 19, they may think they know everything, but when you're older, you look back and you go, "Man, I thought I knew everything at 19, and I didn't know crap about the
Yeah.
world or about myself." I mean, I know I'm not the same person now that I was when I was 19, um,
See.
for sure. And I think the timing is right for Rose. Everything is falling right for Rose. I mean, she's got to go through the push and through the well, they moved on to someone else to back to Rose. I mean, she is just. I think she's going to be a good champion. Once they get this Joanna thing purged out of their system, when Rose beats her again, Rose will go. I mean, I think Joanna will go up to 125. I think she'll be very successful there. And I think I hope we get to fight her at 125.
Yeah, you begging for that fight because you know what's gonna happen, Roger. You know exactly what's gonna happen, and just what I've been saying. This is gonna be if her and Valentina they get in the octagon. This is gonna be a kickboxing match inside of the cage, and who's gonna win that kickboxing match? I mean, we are. This is a rhetorical question.
Man, no matter what I answer, you know what I'm going to answer. I mean, I have to. I mean, there's I have to answer it this way, and then there's I truly believe it's this way. But with me, it's actually all the same. I mean, I think Valentina, pound for pound, is one of the best fighters in the world for women, without a doubt. And you know, she had a choice to make, and we had a choice as a team. But she's the one that made the choice. Is she could have went and fought and been dominant at 125 outside the UFC, and she wouldn't have made a very you weren't making a very good living outside the UFC. Or she could go because she's so highly skilled and fight up and weight, and she did that. And you know that's what blows my mind, that people can't see the difference. I mean, you look at a fight and you look at Holly Holm 135 versus Valentina, it's like David and Goliath. Amanda Nunes versus Valentina, size wise, it's completely different. You know, she's been smaller than all of her opponents in all of her fights. And if you think you're going to fight the same against a bigger guy or a bigger gal, it's just, if you do that, it's not smart. So now she's fighting people her size, where she's the same size or bigger, and
Dude,
I think you're going to see something
I've been
special.
I've been saying that and saying that and saying that, and it's like I'm singing to the choir. But thank God we got some good, actually fans of
People,
Valentina, fans of this
they don't
channel.
have to they don't have to believe it. I mean, they'll see it. That's the thing. It's just like when everybody was hyping up the Juliana fight versus Valentina fight. I mean, we just keep quiet and listen, but
you
I
know,
mean,
I, Roger, I tried to. I think the only fight that I really got really a lot of crap for is Nunes versus Valentina. And yeah, okay, Amanda won twice. We can argue the second fight because I thought Valentina won the second fight, and I thought she won it pretty convincingly. That's what I thought. Even when you look at the strike zone, the strikes or whatever, the edge went to Valentina. Had a lot more strikes. Amanda, I don't know what they're watching, but with that being said, Valentina was the smaller fighter. I mean, she was definitely smaller versus Holly Holm. You can see in some of
I,
the clinches where Holly was kind of
and
muscling Valentina, and Valentina had to trip Holly, to get off her feet, And when she fought Sarah Kaufman was definitely the bigger fighter, And
sure.
she used skill set, man. Valentina used a lot of great skill to actually make Sarah Kaufman fight a different fight. Like Valentina was taking Sarah to the ground, man. It was crazy because everybody was thinking Valentina was going to sit and just strike with Sarah. Valentina just changed the whole game plan around and just turned into a grappling match, and it was pretty good, man. I saw that, and I
Sarah
was like, man, this
Kaufman will be
person,
in it. She'll be back in the UFC and she'll do very well.
yeah, well,
You mark
she
my
should have
word.
never left. She should have never been out of the UFC. I don't. I think her resume is probably one of the top resumes in the sport. It's
That's
good.
that's where you get it. You have to make decisions when you're negotiating your contract, and and so that's kind of like the prime example. What can happen if you don't match, if you don't play all your steps right? That's what could happen
Mm.
to you, because you always have to kind of be realistic about your value of what you bring to the table. And regardless, I mean, in general, I mean, of course, everybody wants to think their value is more than what they're getting paid, for sure. But you have to have, it's just like going to, going and being involved in an auction. If you're one, one bidder auction, it doesn't help you very much. You need to get the price up of something. So it's, my experience, again, with dealing with the UFC may be different with others, but
Well, it's because you make good decisions, and I'm not saying it because I talked to you and I'm a fan. And yeah, okay, yeah, I am biased. Okay, who's gonna say? Well, I say that every day. I'm biased. Okay, I got the fighters that I'm biased. So what? But I notice how you're handling Valentina's career. You're not letting her do too much in one area. You're actually exposing her to different things, and you know, I think it's like you guys are a team. You, her, Pavel, Antonina, and the people that train with you guys. You're a team, but you're the guy. Like you're like the Al Heyman. That's behind the scenes, orchestrating everything, making sure everything goes smoothly. And and when she came to you and you told me the story, you saw the talent. You knew she could be a big star. I mean, you knew it. And it's like, dude, everything you do, everything is tactical with you. I've noticed that about you. You tactically do everything to put them in the best position. And that's what I've noticed about you.
Well, I think in this business, you have to always look forward. And it's not an easy thing to navigate because you have so many moving parts and things can happen. But you have to have a vision and you have to look forward. And it's difficult for fighters. That's really shouldn't be their job. Their job is preparing to deal with what's now. So you have to have that balance and have someone that can work that out because really, I mean, things are always changing. The whole dynamic of like the women's division, like for example, I told you like 125. I truly believe, a year, 2 years from now, people are going to be like, man, that's just one exciting division because you have so many names that still aren't there from other parts of the country, you know, even some that are regional or local that haven't fought in the UFC yet. And this isn't, you have to start somewhere and funneling this talent in. But the best talent in the world will be at 125 will be in the UFC. You may have it in another organization and they may have some good fighters, but the UFC they weren't the first to kick off that 125-pound division. Actually, one of my fears was Bellator was going to go really, really deep and make a go pot committed and pull in all the 125ers and pay them what they should be paid. But they didn't do that. They went and selectively picked a couple that they wanted to promote and be a star and selectively bring in somebody to fight for the title. But they don't really have a division really what I would call like a really 30 fighter division that's going on over in Bellator. I thought they were going to do it. I really thought they were going to do that. And then you know we've had some brief conversations with those guys years ago, and I thought they were going to do it, and they never pulled the trigger on it. They took a different tact on it.
How is Scott Coker gonna explain this one? Scott, how you gonna explain that? But no, to be honest, I interviewed I interviewed Denise Kilholz,
Uh huh.
and she, you know what, she says that Bellator they're doing a good job. I guess now this is like because she's in that new generation. She's like new to Bellator. I mean, yeah, she's new to Bellator, and she said, man, they take good care of her. So they're, and I said, well, are you gonna ever go to the UFC because you're definitely doing well. And she goes, as long as Bellator's treat me well, I don't know. I'm like,
Well, that's easy to that's you know one you have to say that you're signed. You can't start. It's foolish.
hmm,
You have to be at a certain level before you can really start talking like that, saying I'm going to jump to another organization because they'll just say no problem. We'll just sit you down. So they have to be very cautious about saying that and the reality of it. But you can look at the published purses and even though they may have some behind the scene bonuses, I highly doubt that the earning potential is the same. I can tell you that it's not the same. And just I can't tell you from like intimate knowledge of it, but if you look at the published purses, it's not even close to the same of what the women in the UFC can make. Not you look the ultimate measuring stick is champion. You measure champion versus champion and see what they're making. It's different.
yeah,
It's
it's not
different.
even close. It's not even close. And then you look at from Bellator to Invicta to the UFC. I mean, I think the biggest purse for a woman in Invicta, and I got to know that Bellator probably hadn't come close, was $90,000. And then Chris Cyborg won that. I mean, she
The
got a
UFC,
$90,000 purse.
yeah, but the Invicta didn't pay for that. That was the UFC paying for that.
Oh man, boy, see,
That
Roger
that
dropping
was
nuggets, y'all.
well. That's when Chris was. I mean, this is my understanding is that she was signed with Zuffa, but fighting in Invicta. So
Yes,
that's so
Roger is giving the nuggets, y'all. I mean, see, that's something we would have
the
just.
high the highest paid Invicta athlete is Roxanne Modafferi. I think
Oh,
she got paid the highest purse ever. in Invicta when
Oh,
she
okay.
fought for the title. So
Oh, damn.
you can look that up. I think that's accurate. So,
Okay.
but there is tangible difference. And don't get me wrong. I mean, like I said, I didn't say anything in this that was bad about Bellator, because
Mm.
I think Bellator, I personally, from the people that have fought for them, have had nothing but good things to say about Bellator. I'm just dropping the fact that if you're going to compare divisions right now, you have kind of one that they're committed to. They're going to start bringing in athletes and build up to a you know, 30 woman roster, division. That's typically was the magic number that they had of actual, you know, active fighters at strawweight and bantamweight. It used to be 30. That was the magic number. And they had an influx of some in, some out, but that was the number.
So, Roger, let me ask you because one guy says that he saw a quote from Shannon Knapp, and she said in Invicta, they barely break even. So, first of all, let me ask you if that's true, if you know, and then second, what would Invicta have to do to actually, like actually be profitable?
I don't, you know, I don't have any knowledge about that, about what Invicta does, monetarily. I don't know any of their, um, financial situations or their arrangement. I know that Shannon works very damn hard of promoting women.
Hmm.
And part of the whole promotion of women, it's just like there has to be bigger events. And I'm not talking about just promotional events, but I just watched a movie on women's tennis, and it was really really interesting. It was about Billie Jean King,
Hmm.
when she had her tennis match here in Houston, playing against a man, and that
Bobby
was kind
Riggs.
of like the yep, exactly.
Bobby Riggs.
That was actually the defining moment for women's tennis, because they were kind of in the situation where women were back then, even now. Like for example, back then a woman was getting paid $10,000 for the championship fight with the stadium sold out for that woman's match, and the men were getting paid 100 grand. And so, in that movie, and she had a conversation. Well, how come we're getting paid 10 times less? And the response was, well, we have to pay the men more. Um, and essentially, they broke off and made the Women's Tennis Association, and and then ultimately this or not fight, but this match happened, and it was a big deal. I think there has to be bigger fights. I think women like a Chris Cyborg, a Holly Holm, I think as you have these dominant women in the division, even like a Joanna, I think they have to be in those places, and it will really carry the women to the next level. And I think it'll be kind of like the trickle down effect for Invicta, because Invicta does a really good job. They do a great job promoting the women with what they have. All of the organizations they would love to do promotion, but it's difficult, and there's several reasons. Not only is it's not always the promotion's fault. Sometimes fighters, they don't like to be promoted. I mean, you would be surprised.
Hmm.
I mean, of they don't want to be bothered. They don't want to go and if they get an opportunity to go to be a guest fighter, well, they would rather do something else because they're not getting paid, or some just they just are more private. They don't like it. So, and then when they don't get it, they're complaining that, well, I'm not getting paid where I want, or I'm not getting invited to go anywhere. Well, after you turn something down 4 or 5 times, they're not going to invite you back. So,
And
those
see,
are the behind the
and
scenes things that you guys don't see. And when you talk about so and so didn't get the push, so and so didn't get that, sometimes, I mean, every fighter in these organizations, they need to be their own advocate. They need to market themselves more than anybody. Now they can consult with their team, or some people have the luxury of having a team, or having consultants come and talk about, social media or digital marketing. I mean, those are all things that are just ongoing in the psychology of what happens or what goes on to a fight. I mean, there's some fighters that don't post anything going into fight week at all. That's when most people are interested in following a fighter,
And
but
see,
they either don't have someone to do it for them, or they don't want to do it, or there's a whole variety of things. But that's when, like, a fighter can capture fans during that time.
and I even tell you this, there's certain fighters that they don't get a push, but you know what they do? They get on social media, they're out, they're going to fights, like, people used to give Julian Pena crap, but you know what? She was working it. She was pushing herself. She was trying to do what she had to do. Like I see you out here hitting the pavement. Valentina hits the pavement with this. It's like even Antonina to a point. Then you got other
And
fighters.
Antonina has more social media following than many UFC fighters.
But see that it wasn't just because it got there.
No,
She had to do the work.
she works, and Antonina is very, you know, she's very skilled. Number one, it doesn't just come to skill, but again, it comes to personality. People that meet Antonina, like when we go to Lion Fights or Foxwoods, I mean, after the fight, we go out, we meet everybody. You wouldn't believe how many fans come up to her. She's gracious. We go and eat in the restaurant. People come to the restaurant. I mean, and that all, it matters. It makes a difference. I mean, and women athletes, they have challenges of dealing with silly
Mm.
people too. So it's challenging for them in many aspects. And then you have to kind of, it's kind of an art and science to it, and what may work for somebody may not work for another person due to their personality, or
But
for
but you,
several other things. But ultimately, if somebody's waiting for a promotion to promote them,
it's
they're going to be in for a bad shock. They're going to
but
have to do
but
it
you
themselves, and they're going to have
yeah.
to do it with a coordinated effort with a team.
But you got fighters who really, really believe this. Like Roger, like I give an example. And of course, I'm not gonna mention names because I like promoting the sport. But I tell you, man, me and another guy, we do these interviews, and and I just asked him, one day I said, "Yo, did she ever come on?" He said, "Well, no. Why don't you give it a shot?" So I reached out, to the same team, and the manager was like, "Yeah, well, she's not interested in doing, any interviews at this time." And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
we're trying to stay low at the main media. I said, well, and I asked him a question. I said, no disrespect, guy. I said, but man, she's not in the media anyway. And I was
well,
just being honest. And I think he thought he felt insulted. But
well,
my other friend, he wouldn't say it. I said, well, she's not much in the media anyway. I mean,
right, right.
nobody's talking about her. Nobody.
It's it's there's some of the things the media, I deal with the media a lot. I act as a buffer, a lot about scheduling and, knowing when Valentina and communicating with her when she's ready. But like, I know, like our team, when we get serious fight mode a month out, we have to put blocks and chunks of what, having interviews, and, we have to obviously put the UFC in those blocks and chunks of what commitments we have with them, because they're again back to the energy and back to how much time you can spend. If you don't manage that, it can spin out of control. But off season is a different story. So, like right now, I can guarantee you, I can go look in my email, and I have probably 20 people asking for Valentina to go on their show or their blog, anywhere from mainstream to non-mainstream. And
Hmm.
so, and so I've got to, I'm gonna go and respond to them, but I've had to respond to stuff about getting us to Brazil, in a polite, in a very polite way, because some of those things we'll definitely do, but the timing of it is not when she's getting ready this week to fly to go fight in Belém, Brazil. I mean, you got to have a little bit of common sense. If you're a blogger and you have 100 people watching your blog, from my management, not her, it's going to be, and she has a certain amount of time that really, I have to manage to keep her on her top condition. This is what managers should be doing. Uh, you know, you have to say no sometimes, but you should communicate. And sometimes I'm a little slow just because I travel a lot. I fly around a lot, and so sometimes I'm without email service. But I try to always respond. It may be delayed, but if it's in the wrong time, I'll start going back in the off season. And I'll start connecting with people and say, you know what, now's a good time. She'll talk to you, now. And again, that I'm not sure if athletes are managers. I don't know how they manage those kind of things. But at the same time, you have to kind of manage your expectations of the reality of it is that a fighter doesn't have an unlimited amount of time to spend to talk to people because it takes energy. And if you have a foreign fighter, for them to speak in English, it even takes more energy. Like, I mean, and that's their job. They have to do that. So they also have to fight. So managing all that's tricky. So if it was in the off season and a fighter didn't have a fight and they just told you weren't big enough, I mean, that's kind of silly. I mean,
Well, they, and he
everybody,
and this guy Roger, he's actually very, he's very good. Gives some good interviews.
yeah,
I won't say him out,
they're
but he does great interviews. I think he does anyway. And
well. If they do
they
good,
just
because see, we get requests from some bloggers that are just flat out crazy too. So, I have to manage and screen those kind of requests. And again, respectfully, sometimes it's just not a fit.
mm,
Like, there may be, I mean, we get so many requests from so many different sources from, you know, and you have to manage of what the intent is. And like I said, we try to be as diverse as we can. I mean, we were one of the first to give interviews in India for one of the shows there, and
see, there's
they
a
were
good.
just starting out, and now they're like huge. And but before they were just starting out, and they called me last minute one time. I think it was in the last championship fight. They called me last minute. I said, hey, look, I told them this before. I said, you guys just missed our window where we start our media commitment with the UFC, but there's a window that's coming up. So here's who you contact to get in to see if you can get space, and we will tell them on our side to get you in, to get you an interview to come in. That
Yeah.
wasn't like they wanted like to have her and talk to her for 15 or 20 minutes, but they did talk to her for 15 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes and had their time. But actually it was good because then they became a media source with the UFC. So we've done the same thing with several Latin American media as well that didn't start out as big, and some were big or but they were very niche, and they personally didn't have a big following. And it's about building relationships. I mean, that's really you can agree or disagree, but if you're a blogger trying to sell your channel, not trying to sell the fights, or you really don't promote women, you don't promote a good image for women fighters, and then you want to request, it's going to be tough to get through me. I'll just be honest with you. We've had some kind of like what I call men's magazines, not just men's magazines, but they're pretty risque magazines wanting, interviews and stuff. It's like, no, that's not really what we're after. And politely, like I said, is just business. You have
Uh,
to make business decisions, and those are things that you have to weigh all the time of what image you want your athletes and as a team to have. So to answer your question, in my opinion, most of the female fighters, they should jump at the opportunity to come to a show about like your size. It makes sense, but they probably get requests from people that may have 10 followers or 2 followers, and it's hard to make that commitment when when people, a blogger or a vlogger or a YouTuber comes to you and it's like fight week for you. You've got 20 requests. Who are you going to choose if you have to do two or three?
yeah, see, I can see Valentina is, she's actually, what we consider her a star. Like she's got, like a lot of people after her, man. So it's kind of crazy. But if you're like still on Fight Pass, or if you're still on the prelims, the early prelims, like you're the first fight, nobody's gonna know who you are. You should be taking interviews left and
Yes,
right,
yes.
because
Well,
I mean,
you know, well,
nobody knows.
what's
And
crazy,
go ahead.
what's crazy is when Valentina started out. I mean, and still, there really nothing has changed. I've actually reached out to several people that covered Valentina when she started out, but their kind of niche is like covering unknown fighters. Some media, that's what they do. So I was like, hey
That's
man,
what I do
she's
here too.
fighting for the championship. You guys want to meet, interview her? And they said, said, well, they asked me a question. They said, well, we want to ask you this question, but we don't want to bother her, because we're spending all of our energy covering these other fighters that aren't so well known. And I said, okay, well, no problem. Ask me. And then we put together, and they said, well, I'm going to send Valentina some questions. And so we get some questions and give them to them, and they do a write up. So those relationships continue, but they're very small, and we still have relationships just like you and I have a relationship in talking. But that's just their niche of what they do, and that's their company. They don't have the biggest following, and they don't have like the biggest uh, growing channel or Facebook or whatever. It's some of it's very consistent, but they're very consistent and passionate about what they do.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's
So I don't, again, I try to do as much as it's feasible. But what's crazy is when Valentina's open and off season and she's ready to take some interviews, then everybody else is chasing the same. They're chasing the other fighters that are going to be fighting that they're never going to get the interview for anyway. So it's like a misunderstanding of it's like if in business, or it's like, well, it's in business, if you're a small business, you're not going to go compete against IBM. You carve out your niche, and then you wait for your timing to go after jobs, that IBM doesn't want. You can make a pretty good living doing stuff like that. And it's the same. It's like the off season when someone's training, you go and talk to the athletes. What are you doing now in the off season? But that's not when all the buzz and the hype and people. But if you're not the big media that's going to have a big impact, that's where you have to start. In my opinion, this is just my my opinion, because it's tough to get an athlete's time during their training camp. It's just they're training, they get beat up. Not like necessarily just beat up, but the process beats you up mentally, physically, emotionally. So your time's training, recovery, rehabilitation, both mentally and physically. And so when you go and you have media commitments in between, you have to do them, but at the same time, you have to have a finite number of those commitments too.
yeah. Because I know, and I can't mention her name because she said she didn't really care if I did. Um, like I know me and her and I we've been playing like not phone tag. We've been playing tag for a while. Um, oh God,
Some fighters have jobs too. Most
yeah.
most fighters have jobs, so
Like me, me and Rocky.
you throw a job in that too. So, it's
Yeah,
it's
me and
tough.
Rocky.
I
Go ahead.
mean, but it's tough. I mean, for you guys too. I mean, it is tough. I mean, I you know if I get a request, I look, and I don't really look at the size. Like, I mean, but I look at like content of what your content is about. Because I'll get a request often, or it'll get funneled to me, and then we have to talk about it, investigate it, and see if it's. And it doesn't have to necessarily be like like you and I disagree all the time. People don't always, they won't see it or haven't seen it always on the channel, but we have differences of opinion, and that's why I respect you, is because we can have a difference of opinion, and then we laugh about the outcome, whether no matter what it is. I think it's
Who's your
those are
daddy? That's all I got to say. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy?
that but the tide can turn on all that on a dime. But so I don't count my chickens always. But do you have anybody else has a question? We've been gabbing about different
It's-
things, but
oh,
like
somebody did. Okay.
our kind of the way we started working together, or getting to know each other, is I saw what your intent was about with women fighters, not just Valentina, but promoting all women fighters. And I thought along the way, I tried to, give information that I thought would be helpful, not like inside information, but information just of how the business or things really work. And that's what I'd like to do with your audience too, is because most people have really no idea about, you know, you'll hear fighters say it all the time. Well, you really don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and it's really a lot of times it's true. I mean, and it's sometimes it's shocking, sometimes it's expected, but it does make it an interesting sport.
So, so okay, so we do have a question, and this question was way back, and this person probably thought I forgot it, but I didn't. They want to know what is your opinion? Who do you think wins Cyborg versus Nunez?
I think Cyborg wins.
Oh man, okay. So TJ, look at that man. Hey, he thinks Cyborg's gonna win, and all you Nunez followers, which oh man, you know, not gonna make TJ happy. But so okay, how do you think the fight plays out? Like, how do you see it going? How many rounds? You know.
I I I have my opinion about it. I think both are very well-rounded fighters. I think just the physicality of Chris over 5 rounds will start working on anybody she's fighting. And Chris is technical, so if you start talking about Chris, she's not one-dimensional. She's a tactician. She's got the skill. She's got the heart. She's got the conditioning. She's got the strength. There is really not many weaknesses in her game. She can wrestle. I think her wrestling is underrated. And but I think she's a real deal, and I think she's. I'm glad to see that she's getting, uh, she's getting the recognition for the years that she's worked for. But
Yeah.
I don't think they're ever going to build a 145-pound division. And I
Oh God, thank you.
and,
You know how many times have I said this?
and I don't think it makes financial sense for the UFC to do it, and that's going to make some people mad because I think they're just going to continue to bring in people to fight Chris on a kind of a one shot basis because when you bring in a whole new division of 145, again, it's not going to be. I'm just being honest and real, and this is my opinion, and I can be wrong. But when you look worldwide, I think that's a tough 30 person division to fill out. When you think about the roster, look at the rosters that the UFC have, and it was money magic that there was always 30 on their roster, plus or minus one or two, but 30 is the number. And you need to start thinking about the 30 that would fill that roster to start really having a division. And I'll tell you why. Anytime you're going to have injuries, you're going to have people turning down fights, you're going to have all these things. And it doesn't take long it takes two to fight. You start running all the matrix of what can happen. 30 fighters in a division is not very many.
Mm.
Then you have tiers of fighters. You have your your I hate to say bottom or lower, but you have your, let's say you have it thirds. You have one, the the bottom third, the middle third, and the top third of fighters, and then you have to mix and match that stuff. It just gets complicated. So I don't know. That's a lot to take on, in my opinion, without having a whole bunch of prospects, that are just free that could come in and really make make a statement.
See, it's something out there, but then I start thinking,
I
man,
know, but some,
finding
there
finding
you go. You go some, and you
yeah.
think of well, are they good enough?
Well, I don't know.
And I mean, you have to be really. I mean, and again, this isn't popular, but really, the UFC's brand,
Mhm.
if they don't have the best fighters in the world, and I mean, not just someone everybody feels has a good feel good moment. They come in and they come in and they just don't do it. There's been some come in and go out, but their brand is to have the best fighters in the world. So whenever they have a fight, I mean they're hard, they're harsh on their critique on fights. And this I know from personal experience. So,
Mm.
they have a certain expectation of a person performing, and if you go in there and you look like an amateur fighting, um, and I hate to say that, but I mean, if you, unless you're just like a killer or something, like it's going to be, it's kind of counter to their brand. I mean, the judgment of what they bring in and how they do that to manage their brand is what they do. But when you look at it, they've made some pretty harsh cuts on some of the rosters at different times that didn't have anything to do with negotiating of contracts. So it had to do with performance and records, and that's just their brand. So if you brought in people just to fill a division without a like, it would be tough. It'd be tough to sell.
So
If anybody could do it, they could sell it. If anybody could.
a lot of those tough girls, then it's gonna be a few of them probably getting that cut. Then it's gonna be a few of them getting that axe. They're gonna be out of there. But then you got
Some of them already have got cut.
oh man, they don't
No,
take
you
long. They ain't take long, did they?
no, they did. I mean, they did. I'm just being honest. If you look, I think there's at least two that got cut out of there already. So
See, they
but
they
but that doesn't mean to say that that doesn't necessarily say anything at this point. I'm just at 125, like I told you, worldwide. When you look at the number of fights and the number of fighters worldwide in the women's division, there's good fighters at 125. They're just not they're just not as well known. They will be when they come,
mm.
and that's why like Valentina is working hard. She's not resting. She knows what everything's going to happen in that division, and it's going to be exciting, and there's going to be fireworks and all in the fights that are coming up in that
So,
division.
so I think the 145 division. I think it could be a good division. I just think that they don't want to invest in some of the fight that are out there that are not known, but they are good fighters. Like I
Yeah,
keep
but good. You keep saying
I
good.
keep
You keep
well,
saying good.
they're
They
great,
don't
good
want. They
fighters.
don't.
No, they
Great.
good. Well, I'm talking about like the Blinkos. I'm talking about the Buds. Even the Holloways that put on very entertaining fights. They're making these fights and they're making these fights rough and brutal. And
Uh huh.
these fighters, they get they're some of they're top in the world. You look at all the ranking lists, they're
What
top
do
in
you,
the
what do you
world.
think of Dan? What do you think of Daniel Wolf?
Mm, I mean,
She thinks she can do it? 145 MMA.
she's okay. I mean, she's not bad, right? She's
She's a boxer. She's a boxer.
man. I mean, she's decent. I mean, she's got some Olympic experience.
Right. Right. But
But
what I'm
man,
saying is there's opportunities to build that division, but
it's
there isn't just the depth at this time. It's difficult. It's just not that deep. I mean, and I'm not saying this other than just that's just my opinion. I can be wrong,
mm,
but quick, name me 10 that would be in the title hunt right now worldwide against Chris Sideboard. 10.
10 145 pounders.
Yep.
Man, I think you may have me on this one. Let me see. Um, okay, Julia Budd, Amber Liebrick. Let me see. Shoot. Arlene Blenko. Holloway. Don't let the record fool you with Holloway. Don't let that record fool you. No Cindy Denduar. King Raina if she ever got out of Rising. Ooh, boy, that's about it. That's
Yeah.
probably about it. That's
Let's
about all I
say
can.
that's right. Now you're going to build a division and invest millions of dollars to promote it.
Mm.
It's like having a car lot with 10 cars
Oh,
on the lot.
and Megan Anderson. I forgot Megan Anderson.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
She did
okay,
when she decides to,
but
you know.
but it's difficult. Like I said, that's a difficult division to sell. Or other than Chris Cyborg, and this is just my opinion. I think it's difficult for them to build a division around that talent.
Well, you know, true and false. I still think though, if you brought it in, you got to get some talent to put in there because there's
But the UFC, they're not in the business of building talent. They're in the business of making money and having the best fighters in the world. That's the deal. That's what their
See that
mission. They
that can be said about that 125-pound division with some of those fighters. That can be said because you got some fighters in there who not up to par, but they still signed them,
hmm
and probably those would be the fighters that they like you said they end up getting rid of. Um, yeah, because it's a few of those fighters. I'm like, well, dang man, they got signed. I mean, what the heck.
I think it'd be great if they can do it. What I'm saying, back to what I was saying earlier about elevating women's MMA, I think with Chris Cyborg's recent success financially that she's had and being a big name, that like what Ronda Rousey did to women's MMA in general, started I guess like a revolution or a big expansion, like a golden age of opportunity. Think the same can happen with Chris Cyborg in the 145-pound division because it's difficult. What I'm saying is it was difficult to build talent or attract talent if your end opportunity is limited. Now it's the moon. The 145-pound division is in the UFC. People, younger women are going to look and say, "Man, Chris Cyborg can make millions of dollars fighting for the UFC. That's something I can do now at 145." See, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about forever. I'm talking about right now, short term. If you think about it and you're just talking about it short term, it's going to take a little bit more time when you look at the world. And I can be, I said, I reserve the right to be wrong. This is just my opinion. But
Okay.
right now, just like the Bellator model with having their champions fight a select person that comes in out of the organization for a big fight, or somebody in the organization that's not like world champion. They're just it's just not like if Bellator had a roster of 40 women and they were building everybody up to have a title fight. It's different. That's just their model is different in that 145-pound division right now for the UFC
It's it it, it
is
it's
different.
kind it's see, but it's kind of got me suspicious because all right, they signed Chris, they signed Megan. I mean, so why sign those two then? If they don't have any intent on just, maybe putting more fighters that are skilled around, like why would they sign those two? Is it just to have those two fight each other over and over and over? Or, I mean, see,
One,
that's
there's two marketable fighters. They're two marketable fighters, and they have fights for both of those that can fight. I mean, Chris Cyborg, the projected pay-per-views are pretty strong that she did. I mean, and you'd put her in Brazil, fans in Brazil love her, and she's now becoming more mainstream. Her team is doing a really good job of promoting her, and they're taking advantage of her golden age in her time. It's like the right time for Chris, and I think it's a good time for her. And and Megan, she's marketable. They have an event, in anywhere. I mean, she's marketable. But like I told you, when all that gets sorted out, hopefully those two will fight, or Megan will fight, somebody else. I'd like to see Megan fight Holly Holm. That would be a good fight.
yeah, yeah, she loses. Oh, I'm sorry. Who do you who do you think wins that fight? I'm just kind of curious because okay, I already told you who I think.
I think now, right today, I think Holly would win that fight.
Yeah,
But that doesn't mean that again, most as you know, most of the women that fight, I'm a fan of a large number of the women that fight. I'm a fan of them. Very few that I'm not. So actually, a fan of Holly and Megan, and I'm not a fanboy of either, but I respect their work. I think Megan's just young at this point in her career, for MMA, and she'll develop over time if she's with the right team. And hopefully, I don't know anything about her team. I know she was training in Colorado while we were there at one gym that's a good legit gym that she was at. And so hopefully she's constantly evolving and growing. And when she comes, see, that could be another dynamic time is what if Megan came in and upset Chris. It would be incredible if that happened. It's always possible, these fights, anything can happen. But you know, you asked me about, or we got to talking about, will they develop a 145-pound division? I don't think it makes sense for them to do it right now. It'd be nice if they did, but the talent pool is really tough. If you had just a bunch of blazing talent, Invicta had like just some really compelling fights going on, and you kept saying, "Well, they're good. Well, they're good," but when they really, there's again, there's different levels of when you have these divisions, but you have to start looking like, let's look at strawweight. There wasn't a strawweight, they brought it in, and now you look at the top 10 or the top 15. There's pretty good talent there. There's really good talent there. There's a compelling fight. I want to see those fights. The last Invicta fight that was at 145, you had those two, and you know the girl that won, man, that was actually pretty interesting. She looked like it was another David and Goliath fight. She didn't look like she was physically the fighter when you saw them side by side, but when the bell and the door locked, man, I watched that fight. I couldn't turn away. I was really compelled at that 145-pound fight. It was really compelling fight. Got to see somebody that was a black belt in BJJ and a black belt in Taekwondo. That was
See,
pretty wild. I enjoyed.
I just think that their skill sets are not known, and that's the reason why. Because I look at the picking on the contender series, or and they go out and they recruit fighters. I actually think they need to do some of that and discover some of these 145 pounders that's got that skill. They have there's some skillful ones out there. It's just nobody knows them.
Yeah,
And
yeah. No, I think you're right.
you can't make money on not knowing. So
It's
I
true.
mean, it would be kind of cool if you actually did that. Just go around to gyms and fights, and you see some of these up and comers that nobody knows, and like, man, hey, you have Dana, hey man, God, man, you kicked some ass out there tonight, man.
Yeah, it takes that. I mean, we co-manage a man fighter. His name is Rafael Faziv, and everybody probably saw him on the internet. He was the Matrix guy. They showed him in a fight
Yeah,
where,
yeah, they got
yeah,
it duck back and
yep,
wow.
that's him. That's him. Dana White even put him on his social media. I mean, it's crazy. He's a good fighter. He came up under Pavel's system. One of Pavel's students is his coach, and so he got trained under the same system that Valentina got trained under. So his record is he's currently signed with Road FC, and he is a talent. He is a knockout artist. He is an incredible fighter. Man, he's a talented.
So we're gonna be
So,
talking about him soon.
but see, people don't know him. I mean, so I get what you're saying, but the problem, when you really start looking at it, you have to look at, the bar is pretty high with Chris Cyborg at the top of division. It's really high. And when she fights someone, in Brazil, I think they love it. Chris, because Chris is really talented. I think her talent and potential for being a star is still, people like are overshadowed by things that happened in the past or whatever. But I'm glad to see that she's making some headway, because from people that know her, people that I know that know her say that she's a sweetheart, and she's a good person, legit good person. So, you know, hopefully things keep going her way.
Have you saw the Twitter wars that they've been having it with Megan Anderson? It's been kind of comical, actually. I've been laughing.
But that's what Twitter's for. Twitter, that's perfect. And
Megan told her
all
that.
that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
funny because Chris goes, yeah, hey, if Amanda won't fight me, if the fight don't happen in July, you want to fight, and Megan goes, well, that's what my managers are for. That's what your managers are for. Call the UFC headquarters. I was like, oh man, this is good stuff, boy. They keep us entertained because man, stuff to talk about.
Well, that's perfect. I mean, those Twitter things, all that's good, and something has to happen, and some people are really good at that, and we'll see what happens. But anyway, you got a question? I know it's getting late. It's about time to wrap this thing up.
Yeah,
You got any other
just
questions before I
just
head
tell me,
out?
It's time to wrap it up. Roger's a very busy man, y'all. I definitely I don't have any more questions. Uh, yeah, I do. I got one. Oh yeah, I saved the best for last.
Good,
So,
good.
in your time frame, when do you think Valentina is going to be the champion?
I think realistically, probably early summer.
Oh, he called it. He called it. Oh man, I got to mark that on my calendar. Got to mark that on. I got to mark that early summer. Oh, I'm gonna be ready for that fight. I'm gonna be ready. The good Lord will. I'm gonna be ready for that fight. God Almighty. Nico versus well, yeah, Nico versus Valentina. That's gonna be the fight.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I just said that's. I'm just talking. I'm just talking out loud because there's nothing that we haven't got anything ironed out or anything in the works. But I think that's just. I think it sounds good anyway.
Well, okay, yeah, that sounds great. That's music to my ears. I can't wait. I can't wait. And Roger, you got to tell Valentina for all of us. Hey, she got a lot of love here. We definitely appreciate what she's doing, and that she keeps herself, and she definitely is a great ambassador to the sport. Represents the sport very well. And yeah, man, we definitely appreciate her. And oh yeah, and in fact, Antonina, I've even interviewed Antonina, man. And I had so much fun interviewing him, and it was crazy, man, because we were trying to, because it was a big hurricane that time, and I'm still interviewing her, but man, Antonina's a great ambassador, and they carried themselves well, and I can't wait to talk to Antonina again. Actually, because actually, man, she's got like a path coming up, man. And she's got a couple of fights coming up that I really want to cover.
Sure,
That, and I get
sure.
excited when I get excited when Antonina's fighting, man. I get very excited because like the MMA thing, people were questioning it, but Roger, did you see the ground? Well, of course you saw it. You saw it.
I see it all the time. I know everything
Yeah.
there's to know.
Saw a ground game. She's answering questions every single time she steps into an MMA octagon. And I know, Roger, you can't say anything about the UFC. I know you can't give us a hint. That's okay. But Roger, I'm gonna have it up on my calendar and I'm gonna speak it into existence. Antonina's gonna be in a UFC. I'm gonna speak it. I got a date already set up that I've spoken into existence.
Man, I wouldn't, don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. That's all I'll tell you. Like I said, is Antonina, her
don't
her
mess up my.
focus at no. Her focus has been one thing, and some opportunities came along the way when there were no other opportunities that they just kind of popped up, and she did it. But her focus is still going in and defending that line fight title. I mean, she enjoys fighting for line fight, and hopefully that'll materialize here pretty soon.
One day I'm gonna see it, Roger.
Sure,
And
sure.
she because she gave us a teaser. She had on like she was weighing in with some UFC apparel. I said, look at this. I said, look at this. I said, guys, y'all didn't pick up on this, but I did. Oh, but the coach did. She's got
Ma-
on UFC apparel in his weigh-in.
yeah.
This may be a hint for the future. That's okay.
Well, I
I'll
think you're
get.
looking into more than what's there. But
Oh man, how dare you crush my dreams?
hey, well, you tell TJ to keep his goat alive, keep his goat real, and keep it alive. So I see TJ posting on there all the time. So hey, that's good. Like I said, is man, you guys won't ever hurt my feelings at all because I have like there's a couple of mantras I have in my life. There's a couple of rules. And so one is I don't ever try to tell anybody how they should think or how they should believe. And that goes whether it be politics, religion, or any of this stuff. I think some of my best friends are people that we are on the opposite side of everything. And so, but we love each other, we respect each other. And so that's why I think it's great. You guys, y'all put in there, y'all may post some stuff, and I'll laugh about it because I'll laugh about it because I'm like, hey man, I think that's great that they feel that way because every fighter out there needs to have a super fan, no matter what. They all deserve it. They do. They do.
I love it. I love it.
it's
You hear this?
it's
You
true.
hear this, guys? See that?
It's true. It really is true, and all the fighters deserve it. And so, just if you like someone else, that's no problem. That doesn't mean that that doesn't mean anything to us, or to me. Like in a conversation, we can come on the same show and we can argue to death and probably like each other more at the end of it. Because I always say is you never know what a relationship is until you have a disagreement. That's where you start defining your relationships with people.
Yeah, I disagree with Eric all the time, and you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I disagree with him all the time. And Eric, Eric, we miss you. How you gonna explain this one? Well, guys, I definitely don't want to keep Roger any longer. Man, he took time out of his day. Very busy man. He's trying to get ready to go to Brazil. So, guys, on behalf of Roger Allen, the manager of Valentina Shevchenko, one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world, this Coach Sheldon Harrison. I'm done, guys. What are you waiting on? If you hadn't subscribed and you hang it around, even if you're trolling me, subscribe. All right, I'm done.